Hey everybody, this is what we're working with today is a Honda CM250 carburetor. I'll show you the bike. It's a bit of a kind of an old school belt drive 1980s bike. The tank's off and everything. You can see it's got twin exhaust, twin cylinders, and only one carburetor. So we'll see how this carburetor looks compared to the one we did recently off of a CN400. Just based on looks, it looks very similar. There's a couple extra differences, but once we dive in, we'll sort of find out. I can see it has an accelerator pump down here, I believe, which you see this little nozzle there that actually shoots a stream of fuel into the valve area to help, make sure there's no lag on the throttle when you squeeze it. So we'll have this a crack. You can see it's pretty dirty at the moment. I'm going to give it a little scrub and then a full soak, and I'll just show you as I tear it down. Okay, we'll start with the bowls on this one. As always, use your JIS screwdrivers. I use Vessel. So let's pop these loose. These are going to look a little bit different than your standard bowls that we've worked with in the past because of the accelerator pump. Alright, that pops off nice and easy. Looks like we've got a bit of dried ethanol in there. I'll try and just let that soak in. Sometimes I'll even take a little screwdriver just to break some of the dirt loose. See if it'll come. Doesn't seem to want to be. Now you'll see this guy is a plunger. When pushed down, it's meant to actually bring fuel up through here and shoot it through the carburetor. It doesn't want to, it moves, but it's not super easy to move, so I'll go ahead and pull the accelerator pump apart. If you have a rebuild kit, you definitely should replace the diaphragm in here. Let's just hope ours isn't torn because I don't have an extra one. It doesn't mean the carb won't run, it just means when you twist that throttle you're not going to get as quick of a response. There we go. It's obviously spring loaded, so careful. Okay, and that's pretty much the assembly. You got a fairly stiff spring, your diaphragm there, and a little bit of a jet that we need to make sure is clean. Push down there. There's a bit of corrosion. I'm going to hold this up to the light. Okay, I don't see any rips or tears, so I will reuse that. And give all that a bit of a clean. So there's your bowl. I'm not going to try and remove that part of the accelerator pump, but I will be looking for it if it falls out in the ultrasonic cleaner. Now the rest of our bowl doesn't look too great, actually. A lot of this rubber seems to be perished. This is what plugs your pilot jet. So I believe the way this works is you get your pilot, sort of your secondary or your mid, and then that's your main jet that comes at full throttle. So let's go ahead and pull these floats out. Now when I pull float bowls, I obviously submerge them underwater and hope that no air bubbles arise. That'll tell me that they're not leaking. And on here I'm looking for a good seal there on the cone, and that will never happen if the tippy top of it is not still spring loaded. I've yet to come across one yet that has that part stuck, but you never know. Okay, let's get this jet out. I'm gonna make sure, yeah, that screwdriver is not ideal. I've got another one ready for it. So yeah, that one goes all the way down in, so I can feel confident when I torque it I'm not going to strip the brass or anything. And make sure you pay attention to the numbers also. Gosh, I can't even see a number on this one, that's how dirty it is. Oh, I was looking in the wrong spot. So that is a 68, it looks like. And it does have the little brand name star with the K-shaped star next to it, so I know it's OEM. It's either 68 or 88. Yeah, it's 68. Not sure what the manufacturer calls for yet. I haven't looked into the service book, but we'll soon find out. There's nothing aftermarket on this bike. The exhaust, I think, has the baffles removed, but no major jetting changes required for that. Your main is a 138. That seems, no, yeah, 138. That seems about right. That doesn't seem too long for a 250. And remember, this is feeding 2 cylinders, so say you had a 250 with 2 carburetors for 2 cylinders, the jetting is going to be about half that size. This is a process I use just to get them a bit clean before the ultrasonic cleaner. Now for the one that's always the most fun is the pilot. Okay, that'll come out good. If you're having issues with it running, this is usually the one that's clogged up. Well, look at that. That looks brand new, like they've almost replaced it. And it's a size 38. It doesn't have that little K star next to it, so I can tell someone's been in here and they've replaced this jet with a 38. It's not OEM. That doesn't mean the end of the world. It just means the likelihood of it being 0.038 millimeters is less likely than if it was OEM. But I've never had issue running aftermarket jetting, so I'm not going to lose sleep over that. Yep, I can see light through that. So that was clean. To be honest, I really didn't even try and run the bike. This is just something I love to do, clean carburetors. So I dumped all the fuel out of the tank once I saw there was spark. And the carburetor looked pretty dirty, so I thought I'll give it a whiz. Our air fuel mixture, this is a fuel mixture screw. I can tell because it's on the fuel side of the carburetor. This looks different than normal, so I don't know if that's aftermarket. What I'm going to do is count the number of turns until it bottoms out. So 1/2, 1, 1.5, 2. So that's 2 turns out, which is pretty common. Usually it's about 1.5 to 2.5 turns out is where you want to be. If you go more than 3, you start to lose spring pressure. You can see the spring wanting to come out with it. So what I've been doing is checking down that hole to make sure I can see daylight. Oh man, I wish you guys could see it. But I am able to see right down through that, so I know that that's not blocked up or anything. And because the O-rings can be very hard to get out, and they usually fall out during ultrasonic cleaning, I'll just screw this back in and blow it out with compressed air after the ultrasonic. So that's pretty much it for down there. Now let's go up here. So up here, this looks pretty standard. I'm guessing we will see not a rubber diaphragm, but more of like a metal slide with a plastic seal and a spring as well. It's usually a spring. The good part about these is they're real easy to hit with a wheel and clean up and get looking pretty again. So there you go. There's your spring. Here's your slide. Notice how there's a slot there so it can only go in one way, which mates up with that plastic piece. Now you want to pay really close attention to how this plastic slide comes out, what direction it is. See how that almost fell? Now I can tell when it come out, it's with the boss ring facing upwards. So if I wasn't paying attention and I put it in like that, I could have dramas with the air sealing, but I know that it needs to go back in like that. We'll remove this plastic piece. It acts as a guide for the slide, but also there's a couple jetways in here. I think they're for air, but we'll pull it off. As you can see, there's some spots in there, so we'll want the ultrasonic to have full capability. These are known to get bent, so what I do, a trick shown to me, is hit these on a flat surface with flat, like 800 grit sandpaper, just to make sure they sit flat against those airways. And I can see real dark corrosion in there. That brass piece in the middle should pop off, but it's been so many years I don't think it's wanting to play ball. Okay, this is what's called your air cutoff switch. It looks very similar to a accelerator pump, and I think when there's enough vacuum draw on it, either cuts off or opens up a new airway. I'm actually not super confident on what these do specifically. Wow. So on this model, you can see from the manufacturer they have the option to use it, but it's actually all plugged up, so there's no spring, no seal, no nothing. So that's just a part all clean for it to look shiny, but there's actually nothing in there to worry about. So that's a bonus. Our butterflies seem to open good, so I'm not going to remove. You'll notice in my videos I don't typically remove these parts. They just don't need it usually. You'll know if they need it because the butterfly won't close all the way. So really now our biggest obstacle is getting this soaking. Pull it out while it's hot and give it like a scrub with a little brass brush and some spray of degreaser. Carb clean is really good for ethanol, for like grease and stuff like that. You can use brake cleaner, but you're gonna have to like manually get in there with a brush. There's just no way around that. So I'll take you over to the ultrasonic next. I do want to point out one thing about the choke feature. This is an actual choke. So the wire hooks up here and it starts to spin, and you can see somebody's messed with this spring. So I've sort of just hooked it around because the feature still works. When the choke's engaged, it closes the airway all the way, which enriches the fuel mixture going into the engine, which is what it's designed to do. So on a cold day, you pull the choke, it cuts off a bit of air, or you half choke, whatever you got to do. Cuts off a bit of air, and gives it more fuel in the fuel to air mixture. Cool. So I'll clean it. Next time you see it, it should be shiny. Okay, this is a 33 liter, I think it is, ultrasonic cleaner I've gotten. And the good thing about this guy is it goes up to 70 degrees. I've only got it set to about 67. It's slowly climbing up in temp. I just started it today and I put a few kettles of boiling water in to get it going. I just use a mixture of dish soap and Evapo-Rust I found is the best. But you can see right away, I'll clear some of this soap out. as soon as I hit go, sort of some clouds in there forming. When it's a good one. Also, just so you guys know, there's a little ball cage on a chain that comes with these cleaners, and that's how I throw little bits in the ultrasonic without having to sort of dig them out with a hot glove later. It's never fun. So I always make sure to get the jets in there, critical parts really. Bolts I'm not usually too worried about, but if I can fit a few in I will. But basically the way this works is you get what you can in there, close it up, and it dangles like that in the ultrasonic. Alright everybody, so it's all fresh out the ultrasonic cleaner. Everything's real hot, and while it's hot is when I'm going to hit it with compressed air. Just gives us our best chance of finding any lodged debris. It's the best time to get it out while it's still hot. You can see that area cleaned up pretty well. So did down there. That area there cleaned up well. Now, just as I predicted, this little seal came out, so I'll have to go dig in the ultrasonic cleaner and find that little round seal. Most of our gunk came out though. Might be a little tear forming there. The needle is an important part to look at for corrosion. This one's fine. And I already took this on the polish wheel, so it's a lot shinier, but I'll hit it again just to be sure. Alright, I'll clean some of this stuff up and then we'll reassemble it. Okay, I drained some of the ultrasonic out and found the seal there, so that's good. I'll start with the bottoms and we'll start putting that back together. Here's our main. I always make sure I can see light through all those holes there. Those guys. Yeah, it's no problem. Main jets, I'm usually not battling too much. They just work as they're supposed to, because they're so large. You know, 1.3 mil is this one, so. I did a quick search online to try and find the jetting. I did see that this pilot jet used to be from factory 36 and somebody's put in a 38, which I'm okay with. They usually come tuned a bit lean for emissions reasons from the factory, so 38 is only going to give it a bit more juice on the low end. I couldn't find a actual spec for this guy here, but because it's got the OEM logo on it, I'm going to stay with it. Okay, that's nice and tight. You just want to make sure there's absolutely no debris in or around this area. A quick way to check that that's working is to, what I just use my mouth and blow when it's upside down. That should not allow any air to pass through there, and then when I lift up it should go by. So I'll sort of blow, nothing coming out, but I'll use my finger now to raise this. So that's a good way to build confidence before reassembling it. Okay, the bowl, gosh, there's a little bit of crud. If I was a wise man, I'd put in a new gasket, but I don't have one, so we're gonna just hope that that heat was enough to keep it going, swell it up a bit. And lucky for me, I've done this so many times, I remember the length of bolts that go where. If it's your first rodeo, I would just try and keep every different, assembly in a different little plastic container. It's a nice way to just error-proof your reassembly. I also, off camera, when the carbs came off the bike, I loosened that up all the way and let all the fuel drain out through this, so I know that that assembly works. Okay, now we got our half rusty little diaphragm, which I do use like this is RD1, this is a thin film, but it does penetrate rubber and sort of revive it a little bit. So I like putting that in there. Bit of there. I could also use like an assembly lube, but I think this will be fine. Yeah, that's going to seal up nice. I think, and our areas there are all cleared out, so if you follow this part of the assembly, it will end up going over one of these holes, I believe. Yep, just like that. Because there's really no, let's see if you can put it on wrong. Nah, you can't put it on wrong. There's only one way it's going to go, so don't have to overthink this part. But what you do have to do is put the spring on. Sorry if I'm off camera, folks. I need a bit of media training. you wanted to test, oh, I just realized I forgot to put our pilot jet plug on. I'll have to do that afterwards. What I was going to say, if you want to test the accelerator pump when you fill the bowl with fuel, if you could do that outside of installation, you could pull the throttle. It's going to punch the accelerator pump, and you'll actually see it. I'm not even kidding you, it shoots a stream like a little water gun pistol of fuel down into the engine. So that's one way to test it. I just have a bit more faith. But on that note, I didn't put the plug in. Now, let me explain to you why those plugs are a thing and why you shouldn't run without them, I guess. I honestly have never tried running without them, so I can't say it won't work, but I'll explain to you why some carbs do that. So some carbs, there's no rubber plug. The pilot jet just dips straight down into the fuel bowl like the rest of the jets do. But on some manufacturers they have it so the pilot jet, they actually want it blocked off because there's a tiny hole that joins the main and the pilot, or the secondary and the pilot. I could tell if I took the pilot out, there'd be a hole either on this side or that side of the assembly, either there or there, and I could see where it's drawing fuel from. But by having that in there, when I put the bowl on, that puts this little part of the bowl, see that round spot? That puts pressure on the plug to sort of seal that up. That way the pilot jet can only get fuel from the main or that secondary. Most likely the secondary, I'm guessing that's what the feature is for. But if you run without it, you run the risk of getting too rich of a mixture, or sort of taking all the suction power out of the bowl from the mains and the secondary. So what the manufacturer wants is for the mains and the secondary to get all the vacuum power and pull all the fluid through, and one of those will pull fuel into the pilot circuit to get you fuel at idle speeds. Alright, so that's the bottom done. Now we'll do the top. We'll put this guy in first. Interesting. I think this is meant to just be a slip fit, not a threaded fit. So I'll do that. This will go down. This will act as doing two things: a guide for our diaphragm, and also it covers those jets there. I remember before we noticed that the boss for that was up. I never do this without putting some lubricant, even though the fuel will probably dissipate that. I do like having that in there. So a lot of times this won't just go in. You have to pay attention to the brass needle and make sure it's going into that main nozzle area. These are usually the bigger bolts, but I forgot the spring. If I put it in there without the spring, you'd have no resistance, and that slide might rise way quicker than it needs to and give the engine too much air all at once and sort of kill it. That spring is there to just keep the diaphragm down until there's enough resistance to lift it. Some people sort of experiment with stiffer springs, and you can do all kinds of things with carburetors, but often it's best just to put it stock if the bike is stock. Okay, now in theory, That covers all the functional parts of the carburetor. This specific model does not use any of this air cutoff feature, so this is just cosmetic only. I could probably run the carb without that plate, but I'm assuming they didn't want to do that because it just traps dirt and keeps things messy. Okay, so that's on there tight. I'll do my float valve check again by blowing in the fuel hose. Yep, that lets me blow. If I go upside down, it does not let me blow. The other test we'll do is to blow compressed in there and make that diaphragm lift. If you watch, see that? So when you're riding and your engine's drawing vacuum from the airbox, a vacuum goes through there, shrinks that diaphragm space, raises that up, allows more air into the mixture, and which then draws more fuel. So guys, I think that is about it until we get it put on the vehicle. I haven't touched the idle, so I'm hoping that works. Just make sure our choke functions, which it does not. Look, I'm pulling on that and the choke isn't moving with it, so let's find out why. Now I know that that does all the work, and it was working beforehand, so it could just be a situation where because it's hot and expanded it doesn't want to play ball. Or maybe it just had to be moved once, but there we go. Choke works fine. I might even wrap this spring around just to, I know that this is a less than ideal. It used to have a hook that would catch right there, but looks like somebody's broken that part off, so we're dealing with a compromised spring, but as long as that choke functions okay, I'm okay with it. There you go. All right. I think that's it for us, guys. A CM250 carburetor. Well done, everybody. Thanks for joining in. Here's a 1983 Honda CM250 Custom with the belt drive. Starts right up. Odometer and then just a simple neutral turn signal high beam. Got your horn. Turn signals all work. Turn your lights on here. You got your high beam indicator. It's like